Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the show. I am smiling. You can probably hear me smiling because we're on this new platform, which I'm not used to. So this is all new to me. But welcome if you are with us live, and also welcome if you're listening back. Tonight we're going to be talking about September Starts Now, the legacy of Term 6. So this show is about exploring how decisions we make every day shape success of tomorrow. And as the academic year is drawing to a close and we're all very tired and we're all focused on trips, reward events, report writing, data drops and saying goodbye, some of you to year 11 students or year 13 students. So we're busy doing that. But today's discussion is about what legacy are we leaving for September for those children that aren't leaving school like year 11 and year 13. Joining me today is Vicky Colley. Vicky's been on a few of my shows, and that's because we have big long chats about some of our topics on here. Vicky is a head of English. She's also a mother. She's a working mum. And she's been working a long time in education. So, Vicky, hello and welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me back.
Hello. This is strange, isn't it, being on here? We used to kind of talking with not seeing anything or anything, and now we've just got headphones on and we're going to see my little face on the screen, which is interesting. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the September Starts Now. That we've got a legacy in Term 6. So we're just going to start off because obviously Term 6, I always find when I've spoken to colleagues around the school, and you and I have had a chat, Vicky, about this, Term 6 is exhausting. It's the longest term. Well, okay, it's the second longest term because there's a one before Christmas, which is quite long. But it is an important term. So when we think about all the things that Term 6 does, so if we have, if people don't come into Term 6 or they're going on holidays and whatnot, they're going to miss a lot of A, academic instruction, obviously, and then B, all the other stuff that goes up, the end of year shows, the school trips, reward trips, etc., etc. So we need to look at what legacy are we leaving behind. Vicky, I'm going to ask you a bit of a question here. When you think of Term 6 and you're thinking of this term, what is one action that you take that you think is the biggest positive impact on setting you up ready for September? What do you think we could do now already, preempting September?
I've been pondering on this for a little while because obviously, as you've said, Term 6 feels really long, and we've still got another 4 weeks. I think most schools have got another 4 weeks to go. And I'm going to sound really boring in what I say firstly, but I will explain what I mean. So for me, I come at it from the perspective of no fun lessons, which I know sounds awful, but I'm going to get to what I mean. So I think there is a misconception amongst the public, particularly those that don't work in schools, where the mindset is, I know you mentioned holidays, like, oh, it doesn't really matter if I take my child out in Term 6, I can avoid the price hikes in the summer holidays to go on holiday because, they just sit around and watch films all day. And that's not really that's not really what we should be doing. And I think that allowing children to think that that's what's going to happen, and more importantly allowing parents to think that that's going to happen, does lead to, you know, dips in attendance at this point in the academic year. But I think you're right in that it is absolutely crucial. So particularly, I mean any year group, of course, but if we think about the GCSE cohort, for example, the GCSE is a 2-year course, and as an English teacher, I feel, and I know that my colleagues in other subjects say the same, it is such a struggle to cram in everything, all of the content that we have to do, whilst leaving sufficient time towards the end of year 11 for revision. So if we think of term 6 as, oh, it doesn't matter, or the last 3 weeks don't matter, or the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever, I think we're writing off a huge part of curriculum time, which is so essential. So aside from all the extracurricular stuff that I know you've already mentioned and we will talk about more, I think it is not a write-off period. It is a continuation. It is solidifying and consolidating what they've done and preparing them for what's to come. This week, for example, I referred to my year 8 class. I was actually addressing misbehaviour, and I said to them, you are basically year 9 now. And it's kind of that step up, isn't it? Like, this is not the time to slack. This is the time to get ready for what's coming. And instilling
Yeah.
that in them is not an easy task. And that, you know, they're hot and they're tired, and we're hot and we're tired. But we have to keep flying that flag, because if teachers aren't doing that, then students aren't doing that, and parents won't be doing that either.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that's the issue, isn't it? Is that people think that they almost write off term 6. And I think, you know, that's the big mistake, because if you think about how much time, if we go right to the end of term 6, if it's like sort of 3rd week of July, you've probably got about 6 weeks before September. But if you're writing it off when you come back after half term at the beginning of June, then you got like, that's 2 months just over, you know, or 3 months almost of, you know, writing things off and not caring about what's going on academically. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous game to be playing when you think of 6 and you think, well, you know, they're coming to the end. So we've done our end of year exams. You know, this is the week really that people start doing end of year exams, sort of when the GCSEs have kind of finished. A lot of schools use they're already set up for end of year exams. And then it's really hard to get those kids back on track. But I agree, it's really important. It's not a winding down term. Really, we need to keep going, because otherwise we risk the behaviour dropping, uniform standards dropping, and then they just get this kind of blasé attitude. But they will carry that with them into the summer holidays, into September. They'll come back with that kind of attitude. So I think it is absolutely really important that we prepare them for September by keeping the expectations high and giving term 6 that value that it deserves, because otherwise we wouldn't even have a term 6, would we? we'd stop at term 5 if that's what we was going to do. Then term 5 become term 6 and whatnot. So yeah, very, you know, interesting, I think, this conversation when it comes to term 6, because lots of people have lots of opinions on it, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head with parents as well. And you know, before I didn't start teaching until I was, you know, my very early 30s, so I was a mum before that. And yeah, it's a lot cheaper going in term time, but you know, they do miss some really critical kind of step up, if you like, in term 6 up into their next year group. So if you're like year 9 and you're going into key stage 4, if you're year 6, you're going into year 7. But even year 7 to 8 and 8 to 9, it gets harder. And you have to start preparing them now for that level of work and that level of challenge that they're going to have in September, so that they don't walk into it in September thinking it's just an extension of year 8 or, you know, an extension of year 7. It's something new. You get in, you know, we're English teachers, so they're going to get harder text to read. Their analytical writing and critical thinking is going to get harder. And I think if we don't prepare them for that in term 6, we've got a real issue when they come back in September. And of course, there's a lot of research that suggests that, you know, and we know it from when we do term 1, then when they come in, do tests for reading ages, or, you know, year 7 do CATS tests and all the kind of benchmark tests that we do, that we know they kind of regress over the summer holidays because they've not been keeping up with that brain activity that they normally would be. So I do think it's a really important term. I do think that it's underrated in terms of a term and the amount of work that you could get done in term 6. Yes, it's an issue when you've got these school trips and the rewards trips, but I kind of give that I kind of build that into my planning. So I will think, right, okay, I've got X amount of year 9 students going out on a rewards trip. So what can I do for this lesson that is going to maintain the standards of learning, and not just stick a film on, even if it's related to what you're doing? What can I do that's going to engage them? So sometimes I do things that are, I take a bit of a risk with what I'm doing. So we might have mini whiteboards out. We might do some writing on those. We might do, get out of our chairs. I might even, if I'm feeling really brave, take them outside for a lesson and do something different. Sometimes with English, you can do some really lovely creative writing when you're outside. They can take their books. We do some sort of journaling. They can talk about, what the sun feels like on their skin, what the grass feels like underneath them, that sort of thing. So sometimes I think you just need to get creative, but you can still maintain that level of academic learning, I think, in term 6. So let's move on then and think about how teachers can balance finishing the current year strongly while preparing pupils for success in the next one. So, is there, for example, I'll give you an example of this. So I lead a lot on reading. And I think reading is super duper important in schools, and even at home. If you're home educated, they should still be reading at home. And there's often a temptation, really, to kind of move away from that and not set any work over the summer holidays, etc. Now, the expectation is. Sorry, the expectation that they feel is that you have to do it. It's not that they have to do it, but I think it does give children an option. So I might give them a reading list to take home. I might give them, some creative writing or poetry tasks to do over the summer holidays. For my year 10s, I will give them a booklet based on revision things that we've done, like Macbeth, etc. And they will have a little booklet to take home that they can fill in over the summer. And I'll encourage it, and we'll give merits and we'll give rewards for those people that come back in September and they've done these things. We might even do, I know that other subjects like geography and science, they do like summer projects. So they make, I think they was making a volcano one year, and there was like a scientific project about nature, I think it was. And they could bring that project in September, give it to the head of department, and then they give rewards for those students, and it just keeps them ticking over the summer. So how do you feel about that, Vicky? Have you got any thoughts about preparing pupils for the success of next year?
Yeah, I think holiday work is a really good idea. I think it's a good way to keep their minds ticking over, and I think taking the compulsory element away, it's not like you're going to have a detention if you don't do this, but coming at it with the positive perspective. So I've created this for you, and coming at it from I care about your outcome, or I care about your development, or whatever. I've made this for you, and it would be really useful if you could spend an hour a week, because that's over the 6 weeks off. I don't think that's unreasonable. Doing this, I don't think that's unreasonable. And I think the tasks that you put in something like this can be a bit more out of the box. And this isn't something that needs to add to teacher workload either. Like, as you said, like it shouldn't come necessarily with you absolutely must do this or you're going to be in heaps of trouble. Like that's not what it's about. It's a case of, here's something that you can do that will help you for next year, and you can collect them in September. You can have a flick through and you can give merits, reward points, postcards home, whatever the reward system is in different people's settings. But I think encouraging that continuation of learning is really important, because, as you said, students do regress between July and September. I mean, I feel like as an adult, I also regress over the summer holidays, because you go from being in such an intense, constant decisions, constant thinking, constant adaptions, all these things all the time, to not as much of that. Planning and things goes on in the holidays, but not in the same way. And I think we all have a little bit of a reset in September, don't we? But I think doing something in the background, for the students and for us, I think it does help tick over.
Yeah, I always find that for me as a teacher, when the summer holidays come around, I still stick to a bit of a routine. It's a slightly different routine, but I will do bits of work over the summer. And I'm not suggesting that all teachers do this or anything like that, but for me personally, I like the routine, and I have done it before when my children were younger, where I didn't do summer, and I had good 4 weeks of 4 to 5 weeks of just not doing any work. And I found it twice as hard to come back in September, not because I was behind, but just my brain was in summer mode and I just wasn't engaged enough. And so I found that whenever there is, a break, a half term, Easter, whatever, okay, apart from Christmas, because, it's Christmas. But for all the other breaks that we have, or our annual leave, as I should say, because that's what it is for us, I will do a little bit of work just to keep my brain ticking over and just to keep myself in a bit of a routine. So I will get up and I'll have a coffee and then I'll do a little bit of work and then I might do something else. And then, so I build it into my day. So there is a routine, because I find if I don't do that, I find it really hard engaging my brain back into working life in September, because it's, we do, as soon as the children come back in September, it is all hands on deck. The kids are back and it's full on from the minute they walk through the door. It is full on. It's like it's like you've never been off. So I do like to keep that. And I think it's helpful for children as well to know that actually, as they get older and they go through life and they leave school and and join a job, that actually, unless you're, working somewhere that has these different breaks, you're not going to get these. So it's important that they understand it's important to keep your brain healthy and keep it going, and it's good for their well-being as well.
I am just to add on to what you just said. I definitely agree, and it's interesting because I was a teacher. I know you said you already had your children before you trained to teach, but I taught before I had my daughter. And honestly, I don't know what I used to do with myself in school holidays before I had her. Like, I must have been living the dream. I don't know, but now obviously I have that routine of we wake up in the morning because she's 3 and she wakes up in the morning, so we wake up in the morning. But what I've found really useful, particularly since having her and being a head of department and more kind of responsible for a lot of curriculum planning, a lot, very time consuming tasks, is that I'll have designated days in the holidays that I set aside for work. So for me, having a little one, it doesn't always work to try and do little and often, because so many things crop up in the meantime, and that's difficult. So what I might do is arrange for her to go to Nanny's house, and I'll say, okay, so on the 23rd, I am going to get up early. My daughter won't be at home. I'm going to work from this time to this time. And I actually find I am so much more productive when I've designated a day or two in each break, maybe a few more in the summer. But when I know, okay, on this day, I might even go into work if it's open for those days, because I find that in that work environment, I am more productive. And I think it's important as well, I think, that the students know that we don't see the holidays in the way that they might perceive them, but maybe that is something to tackle, that actually you should be doing little bits here and there, the students I mean, to keep things alive, because they do forget things, of course they do, and it means the more that they can do in the weeks that they're off, particularly the summer break, the less work we have to do in September to try and plug gaps and address misconceptions and crucial information that they've forgotten. It's kind of, if they can keep it ticking over, it's a little bit less pressure on us, and we can do new stuff rather than trying to remind them of things they might have forgotten.
I 100% agree. So we're going to continue this conversation in a moment after we've heard from some of our sponsors, and we're going to move on into, what can we pass on to the colleagues in September that might be taking over some of our classes and or having some of our students. And we're also going to look at what routines can we embed before the summer holidays. So we will be back in 2 ticks.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on 2 of the biggest barriers girls face today: misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive, because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service, makes these steps easier with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Hello, welcome back. Okay, so we're going to go straight in with another discussion, and we're going to just talk about what routines could be or should be embedded before the summer break in order for those students to really come back on the best possible footing that they can. For me personally, routines, I've always lived my life by routines because I don't like not having a routine, because if I don't have a routine, I just feel like I'm just floating around, not doing, I'm actually not very productive either if I haven't got a routine. So I really do believe in these, and I think children thrive on routine. And when I became a parent, that was the first thing I put in, is having these routines. And I think, it helps growing up, and when you become an adult, because it structures the day for you and it structures everything. So for me, the routine to embed in term 6 would be actually being on time and making sure that we're still adhering to all of those expectations within the classroom. So if a teacher is saying 3, 2, 1 silence, or whatever the command is for being quiet, that we're actually still embedding those, because I think that gaining the attention in the classroom is what is going to help their learning. So if we're not gaining that attention, if we drop the standards a little bit and allow the odd student to talk over us, or just kind of get up and wander out their seat to the bin, or I don't know, go and get a drink or whatever they're going to do, or just chat to their mate, I don't know, what they might be doing out of their seat. But if we allow it, and we allow the little ones to get away with I say the little ones, like the small stuff happening in our classrooms, I think that's when we are in that risky zone of everything falling apart, because you need those foundations and you need to make sure that the children are listening to you before anything else can happen in that classroom. So for me, I want them to leave in term 6 right on the last day, when they're moaning at me because I won't let them watch, Cars or something. And I will say to them, no, we're going to read, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do some creative writing, or whatever we decide to do. And I will still be using my routine of maintaining silence, and I'll still be using my routine of handing out the books and then passing to the left at the end, etc. And I'll still be doing that. And I want them to know that, so that when they come back in September and they see my face again, they'll know, yeah, Miss won't let us get away with just throwing the books to the end of the aisle, or just randomly shouting out a question, because they know that I'm not. My expectation is that they put their hand up if they've got a question, and that they pass the book to the end. Otherwise, there are sanctions and consequences for our actions. So for me, that's what my routine would be: is making sure that signal for silence and that classroom routines are maintained right till the bitter end. How about you, Vicky? Have you got any embedded routines that you're going to keep right up to the end to help maintain that routine in September?
It made me laugh when you first started speaking, because the first thing that for this section, because the first thing that popped into my head when you said when you kind of posed the idea of what do we need to embed, what do we need to maintain, my first thought was punctuality, and then the first thing that you said was punctuality, which made me laugh.
Yeah.
It's nice to know that we sing from the same hymn sheet. No, I agree with everything you said. I think really maintaining, because by this point in the academic year, mostly your classes are going to be kind of where you want them to be. You've taught them for nearly an entire academic year, you've laid the foundations, you've kind of stamped out the behaviour you don't want to see, you've got good relationships with the kids, got probably good relationship with most of the parents by this point in the academic year. And I think you can't just let that drivel off for the last few weeks. So I do agree with what you were saying, but I think a point that is also relevant, so in terms of maintaining classroom expectations, is that whether a school has kind of a shared language for behaviour or whether they don't. I know most schools will have a behaviour policy of some kind. Some schools kind of insist on a common language, some don't, whatever. But I think when teachers within a school start allowing poor behavior to slide, and they're not putting children up on it, they're not applying sanctions, they're not, not following through with consequences, I think what teachers in that moment, when they're hot and tired and maybe they can't be bothered, which is not a criticism, we all feel it sometimes, but I think what kind of gets overlooked perhaps is that the impact that can have around the school. And this time of year cover might be a little bit high. You might have externals coming into your school who maybe don't know your children, they don't know your behaviour policy, they might be teaching a subject that they don't know very well. And I think that almost can't be helped. People do get poorly, there are reward trips and extracurricular stuff going on. So what we can ensure, I think, is that when the children are having teachers they see every day, the least we can do is ensure that the behaviour standards are as high as possible to help everybody out. Because the minute it might slip a little bit in a supply lesson, we know that the kids will play up for supply. Hopefully people listening are in settings where the leadership team and the middle leadership team are kind of nipping into those lessons and checking on behaviour and checking on children and all of those things. But I think the biggest thing that we can do is kind of, even in the tough last few weeks when we're hot and tired and bothered, is pull together and ensure that our expectations remain high, so that the impact on the children is less in terms of the negative impact, but also the staff around the school, the impact on the rest of the staff body is lessened as well, because we're all in it together and we've all got to kind of keep those standards high, because the more we let slip, the harder it is going to be for everybody else.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, and I know it can seem like we're, children have accused me of being really boring and it's not fair and all of those things. But actually, sometimes you have to hold this line, and you're doing it for them. If at the end of the day, that's who you're doing it for. But there's that old saying, you have to be cruel to be kind. We're not being cruel, but we are trying to be kind with how we set our expectations. And I think in June and July, I think the children, we start seeing shirts untucked, ties being loosened. They start running around a bit more. I don't know why, because it's boiling hot, but they're children and they run around a bit more. And one thing I really hate about the summer is water. They start they have their water which they can drink, obviously, but then they start, piercing holes in lids and spraying it over each other. And then we have the odd water gun being brought in and hidden in blazers, and you have to confiscate them. And it's things like that. So that, I just think it really, you're laughing probably because you've seen it even this week, because I definitely have. We've had a hot day today. I've got one water gun sitting on my desk at school that I've had to confiscate. I've had the caretakers coming up and helping me wipe the water off the floor, because they've decided, to fill up their hands with water in the toilet and then flick it at each other because they're so hot. So it's things like that, and just making sure, yes, we know you're hot, we understand this, but we still don't flick water at people, because even they just think, oh, it's okay, it's hot, I'll get away with it. But we just have to make sure that they don't, because otherwise we'll end up with anarchy in the corridors, and we can't be having that. So yeah, really good discussion there, Vicky. Thank you. I'm going to move on to my next question before I play the news. And this is actually quite valuable, I think. I think this is one of our things that we need to make sure that we do every single term 6, is the information that we have on the pupils that we're currently teaching. We need to be able to pass that on to colleagues. So whoever, because obviously some schools might have their timetables already, but I've been in schools previously where you don't get your timetable in September until the last week of July. so like just literally last week of term. So you don't know who you're teaching. But when you've got that list of children that you're teaching in September, I think it's really important that we have a bit of a handover of information of what's been learned in the year previous. So my question is, what information is it that is most valuable to pass on to our colleagues in September to help them help the students, in your opinion?
Oh, that's a big question.
It is a big question, isn't it? It is a big question. I mean, I know, for me personally, I like, and I'm sort of talking over you a bit here, Vicky. I asked you the question, then I'm answering it myself. But I'm going to start off. I'll start off. Yeah, I'll start. So I've been in schools, and they've done it in different schools, and they've done different things. And the best thing that I've seen done was a spreadsheet that was created, very simple table with the students' names or initials in the class down the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, it just had what the child was like learning wise. I mean, not personality wise, but learning, how they learn best. Do they learn best on a laptop? Do they need movement breaks? Those sort of things. And then those were just jotted down on the spreadsheet for me. So when it was handed to me, I would look at it and go, okay, so they need yellow paper, or they need this, or they need that. That's fine. And then actually having a face-to-face conversation with the other teacher that's had them all year. I mean, we're English, so we see an awful lot of these children. So I don't think you can ever replace a face-to-face conversation. I really don't. And I just think, we filled in this little spreadsheet just with their learning strategies. I mean, we can get those off the passports, but I think it's quite nice just to hear it from the person who's been stood in front of them all year. So just jot those things down, like the yellow papers, what pens, do they forget their pens a lot, those sort of things. And then I would have a face-to-face conversation with the teacher and just get a bit of a gauge of how they've taken my subject. What, do they like reading? Do they not like reading? Do they hate writing? Why do they hate writing? So just a little bit of a conversation, sit down with that other teacher face to face where you can have a little chat about them. Because I don't think you can, I think those little nuggets of information that teacher has got has actually really saved my bacon in the past. And I've really used those to start on the best footing that I can in September, so that when they turn up thinking that I'm a new teacher and they're gonna, because sometimes in September you can feel like a bit of a lion in a cage and they're all there prodding you and looking at you through the cage, like seeing what's going to make you blow or what's going to make you tick. But I think if I come in and I already know all their learning needs, etc., then I can start like ahead of the game and I can start putting those in place straight away, and then I start to get to know the child. So what's your opinion, Vicky? I kind of talked over you, but now it's your turn. What's the information that you think is most valuable?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Everything you just said. I think some kind of handover is essential, but that's not just, for example, if there was a teacher that wasn't taking their year 10s into year 11, for example, it's not just for the GCSE cohort. I think this counts for every student, and I think it is really important because, as you said, like, it means when you go in September, I think from a teacher's perspective, it actually saves you a lot of time.
Yeah, it does.
And I don't mean like from a workload perspective. I mean from a, like, when you first get to know a group of students and you're trying to work out, oh, okay, so George prefers it when I do this, and Freddie might benefit from a task management board, and like, you don't have to trial and error because you've got a trusted colleague who's taught them for a year and has told you, oh, this is a strategy that works particularly well for this child. So I think, it saves time, and it means that learning happens quicker from September, or a good level of learning. I don't mean that, they don't learn for the first 2 weeks while we get to know them. But what I mean is, you already cut out that what do they need part. But I also think on this, I think I'm thinking of a particular student here. So I was this person's form tutor and English teacher for 2 years. So I saw, I mean, it was the whole class, obviously, but I saw this particular child really a lot. And I had a really good relationship with her. And then she was obviously, sets change, there's movements, and I wasn't going to teach her anymore for English. And I think that it was really important because she's a reasonably capable kid, works hard, but she's very, very quiet. And I think these kinds of conversations, it can't just be for your SEND children or for your your high profile kids or your behavior kids. So for example, George can't sit anywhere near Philip because they're a nightmare together because they're both very naughty boys. Not that we talk about children like that, but what I mean is it can't just, in my opinion, it shouldn't just be behaviour and SEND. Yes, that both of those things are really important, and I'm not saying they're not at all, don't get me wrong, but I also think the conversation needs to be had for kind of the quiet kids who might slip under the radar.
Yeah, definitely.
While we're so concerned with the
Yeah.
incredibly low reading ages and the explosive outburst kids,
Yeah.
I think actually your middle of the road kids who will quietly plod along but might actually really struggle, but they're just not very vocal about it. I think those kids really need highlighting in those conversations, because if you get into grips with what might be a slightly trickier class, you might not notice that child straight away as a new teacher of the group in September. So having certain children flagged, oh, this child will benefit from this child will never put their hand up and ask for help, but they'll probably struggle with this, that's absolutely crucial information to know.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and I think it reminds me of this that short video. I'm going to explain something, and people are going to have to try and work with me on the visualization of this. But it went round social media for quite a while, where there's people playing basketball, and it says you keep your eye on the ball, so you watch this ball being bounced around, etc. And then afterwards, the question is, did you see the dancing bear? And you're like, no, there was no bear. And then when you play it again, there is actually someone dressed as a bear dancing in the middle of the basketball game, but you don't see it because all you're concentrating on is that ball bouncing up and down and going every which way. So, and you kind of relate that to children, that like you said, the people that we have passports for and we hear from a lot, and they might be more vocal than other children, and not forgetting those really quiet, diligent children that just get on with things, but they're not excelling or they're not failing, they're sort of just middle of the road. It's making sure that we know that we see them and we can hear them and we know they're there, and I think, like you said, that is absolutely important, and that's one of the things that teachers that have previously taught them can definitely pass on. Okay, we're going to carry on with the conversation, but we are going to have some news first. So please do join us. Please don't switch off or move away, but do go and grab yourself a nice cold drink on this very muggy evening, and we will see you in a few minutes.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on two of the biggest barriers girls face today: misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive, because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service, makes these steps easier, with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions, so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
Schools Week focus on the 61 people who work in or with schools in England who have been recognised for their services to education in the King's Birthday Honours. They include head teachers, academy leaders, trustees, school support staff and charity leaders. Steve Munby, the former Chief Executive of the National College for School Leadership and Education Development Trust, has been knighted. The full list of those receiving honours for education can be found on Schools Week online. The TES magazine says lockable pouches that prevent students from accessing their devices during the school day are central to DfE plans for phone-free schools. A framework has been established to supply them to schools and has been awarded to Blue Light Commercial, with an estimated value of £60 million over 8 years. Teaching unions have previously warned about the cost of funding lockable pouches, with ASCL saying costs could range from £20,000 to £40,000 per school. The estimated contract period for the provision of the pouches is between June 2026 and June 2034. Schools will not be forced to buy exclusively from the suppliers within the framework, but it provides a national mechanism to help them place orders. Schools Week says almost half of the GCSE attainment gap between poorer pupils and their better off peers is locked in by the end of primary school. New research from the Education Policy Institute and the Education Endowment Foundation found lower prior attainment at age 11 was the largest contributor to an average 18 months gap, adding 6.8 months. Disrupted schooling was also found to play a progressively larger role as children move from primary to secondary. In primary, absence contributes to around a fifth of the attainment gap, but it rises to a third at Key Stage 4. Researchers say early intervention is crucial, but should not just focus on academics. Collaboration with services beyond the school gate is vital. Finally, the BBC says children and young people's enjoyment of reading has risen for the first time since 2021. More than 1 in 3 said they liked picking up books in their spare time, and 1 in 5 aged 8 to 18 say they read every day. The research was carried out by the National Literacy Trust. Previous figures show that in 2021, enjoyment at all ages was at 51.5%, but by 2025 it had fallen to 32.7%. The new figure for 2026 of 36.1% marks a recovery, but more will need to be done. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, who has made 2026 the National Year of Reading, said, "When reading feels relevant and role models get involved, children develop a passion with benefits that go far beyond the classroom." More details on the BBC News website. This has been Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
Hello, welcome back. Well, that was a bit of a turn up for the books, isn't it? Talking about reading increasing, that's amazing news. As my regular listeners will know, I am an English teacher and I love reading, and I really do promote reading throughout my school. Vicky's also an English teacher and a head of English, and she's also very passionate about reading. So that's really good news that the Reading for Pleasure stats are going up. Anyway, let's move on to our next question. Well, we're talking about term 6, and I'm going to move it slightly into something that Vicky knows a lot more about than I do, which is what role curriculum planning. takes in creating a strong start to the September. Now, many years ago, I was a head of department, but I'm now a senior leader. So, and I lead mainly on teaching, learning, and literacy. So I don't get involved in the curriculum planning anymore. But obviously, Vicky's a head of department, so she is in the thick of it with curriculum planning. So you are in the best position here to answer this question, Vicky. So, what role does curriculum planning play in creating a strong start in September?
So I think term 6 is absolutely critical. It's very helpful, I suppose, when if you're in a school that has GCSE and A level, when the elusive and desired gained time appears in term 6.
Yes.
Not always.
They're good adjectives to describe that, or are they verbs? I can never remember.
Gained time, I think, is somewhat of a blessing. I think that, I think curriculum planning can happen with or without gained time, but obviously you feel less like you're like chasing your tail and you're constantly trying to meet your own deadlines if you do have some gained time to play with. That being said, I think term 6, so with or without gained time, preferably with. Term 6 is a hugely important term for reflection, and I think as teachers, I on for the most part, I think we are very reflective people, based on conversations with colleagues and things that I've read and just my own experience. I think teachers are really reflective, and in your training years, you have to be really reflective. And after lessons, you're reflective. I mean, I currently teach 2 year 10s, 2 year 10 classes, and obviously one class is doing kind of the same lesson before the other, if that makes sense. And I'll think,
Yeah.
oh, that would have been better if I'd done it like that. And then when I have my other 10s, I might swap something around. So reflection, I think, is a massive part of a teacher's role. And I think when it comes to term 6, one of the most meaningful, goodness me, one of the most meaningful things, that was hard to say, you could do as a curriculum leader is to sit down with the team of teachers that you have, with all their creativity, all their ideas, all their lived experiences of the curriculum that you've built or you've inherited, and rag rate the whole thing. I think that's a really, really useful way to spend some department time towards the end of the academic year. Your key stage 3 stuff, your key stage 4 stuff, your key stage 5 stuff, everything. Because I think then you're not just leading in a in a sort of dictator-esque manner that this is my curriculum and you're going to teach it. It's a case of, well, actually, let's have a look. Is that the best place for that poetry cluster to be taught? Do we think it would be more beneficial to do this? What's missing from this scheme of work? Do we feel like our children are exposed enough to unseen extracts or unseen texts? Or do we feel that there needs to be more non-fiction? Does there need to be more of a focus on oracy? Like I feel like term 6 is such a good time to hear from your team how they found the curriculum that you've all built and worked on together. I think it's so beneficial, and you've got a wealth of experience in the room, and it's also a really nice time to say, who would be willing to tweak the year 8 term 4 unit on dystopia or whatever it might be, and you can use the expertise of your teachers as you move into the new academic year. Because I think something I struggled with when I became a head of department was actually collaborating and leaning on the expertise of my department, not because I think they're not capable, but because I don't want to put too much on them. But actually, if I've got somebody in my department who absolutely adores Charles Dickens and studied him, did a massive module at uni all about Dickens, why am I not going to have that person write my scheme on Great Expectations or A Christmas Carol or whatever or Oliver Twist, whatever it is? I think it's a really good time to see what your team have enjoyed teaching, what they think the students have enjoyed learning, and how they think they can build it to be better, and what their opinions are. And so you're not leading in that kind of I don't take any opinions, I just do what I want vibe, but instead you're hearing from the team. And so as well as getting kind of your staff voice, I mean, where I work, we do student voice like every term, which is great, and it gives us great data to play with, and we hear from the children and all those things. But if your school doesn't have that as like a policy, or your Hodge doesn't do that as a policy, I think getting some student voice in term 6 before you move into the new academic year is also absolutely integral, because although we're not there to be kind of entertainers and you can't force every child to love your subject, you want them to like it at least a little
Yeah.
bit, and
Oh,
you
yeah,
want
yeah.
to take steps to try and find what it is that they enjoy doing, so that you can make it a better learning experience for everyone. So
Yeah.
for me, in terms of moving the curriculum forward, obviously finding the time to make your tweaks and your changes and your shifts, whatever you need to do, but hearing from the staff, so important, taking their ideas on board so that they feel heard, and making the schemes of work better, the resources better, and hearing from the kids as well. They're the ones that live it every day, and they're the ones, it's all for them, isn't it? So we need
Yeah.
to know how
Yeah.
they feel about it.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, Vicky. But also, I think it's important to note that actually I've obviously worked in lots of different schools, and I've had different heads of department. And I think it's, some heads of department don't give their staff that opportunity to give their feedback, and they do blindly say, no, I like it, it's staying, even if the data suggests that maybe the kids aren't enjoying it, even if the teachers don't like teaching it. So we do have, there are heads of department that are like that out there, or at least used to be when I was in schools a few years ago. So it's nice to hear that, that it's okay to ask your staff for their help and their expertise. And I think it's, as a member of a department, even though I'm a senior leader, I'm still an English teacher, having that time, or that trust as well, that I've been given something to expand on, like Dickens or dystopia, whatever it might be, that someone trusts me with that. And that was the start for me of wanting then to become a head of department myself, become a 2IC, and etc. etc. So I think that is really important. So curriculum planning in term 6, like you said, the elusive game time that people might have or not have, because some staff leave and you have to take on other timetables, and depending on what it is, I think I've been in schools in double figures now, and I've not had much gain time in all those years, because I'm usually then put on another class because somebody had left and they've been on long-term supply, whatever it might be. So, and I think the curriculum planning and having that time to do the curriculum planning is really important. So, yeah, excellent answer, Vicky. Well done.
Can I just add one more thing?
Of course
Sorry,
you can.
it just popped into my
Yes,
head.
of
I
course.
also think, and I don't know how I don't know the adjective I want. Hang on. I don't know how cheeky this is going to sound. That's not the adjective I want, but
No.
you'll understand what I'm saying. When you're planning for the department to use your resources, I feel like the caliber of your work increases. So I feel like if I don't know, maybe I'm being a bit tongue in cheek here, but I feel like if I'm making resources for my class, that's one thing. But if I'm making resources to go in a shared area that I know my department are going to dip into and obviously make their own and use as they need and add things, take things away, whatever. But I feel like the caliber of what you're providing instantly increases because
Yeah,
of
I
that.
agree. Yeah.
So your standard instantly goes up. It's a bit
Yeah.
like, I suppose, if you know that somebody is coming to observe you,
Yeah.
even though you teach every day, it's your bread and butter, you try your best, obviously, of course you do, but when you know someone's coming,
Yeah.
you try that little bit more. And I
Yep.
can't help but think that when you're providing resources, or you're supporting with providing resources for a team, a department, the standard of your work will increase ever so slightly. And I also think, on the back of that when you then get to teach that scheme that you've worked really hard on, I think there's a sense of pride when you deliver it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
definitely.
Like, it's the one
Oh,
that
yeah,
you were in
yeah.
charge of.
Yeah,
And
that's
you're like,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really proud of my Macbeth scheme. That's the best
Yeah.
Macbeth scheme that I've ever seen in all the places I've worked. This is a true story. You have that sense of pride, and I think that's a really nice thing. And I actually find it quite sad what you said, that there are heads of department, and there probably are now, Sarah, still heads of department that just don't
Yeah.
have that attitude. And I do think that's a shame, because I think you're losing out on the potential to tap into the skills and expertise and creativity of the
Yeah.
people that you work
The
with every
people.
day.
Exactly. I 100% agree. Right, we're going to finish off in a few moments. I'm just going to play some more ads from our sponsors, and then we're just going to finish up looking at what we can focus on as one thing before the end of term and what it should be. So we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
As teachers, we know the barriers girls face go far beyond the classroom. That's why the FA and Barclays Made for This Game Breaking Barriers campaign is taking on two of the biggest barriers girls face today: misogyny and body confidence. Right now, 56% of teachers say they don't feel confident discussing these topics with their students, and that's exactly where this campaign can help. With free, easy-to-use resources and a podcast designed for busy teachers, Breaking Barriers gives you practical support to help start the conversations, creating more positive environments for girls in school, in sport, and beyond. It's time to empower girls to believe they belong. Go to girlsfootballinschools.org and click on Made for This Game.
In education, we all want recruitment to be fair and inclusive, because the gender pay gap won't disappear without clear, practical steps in how we hire. Recent national research shows schools are already taking meaningful action. 40% of leaders now include pay or progression details in adverts. 35% highlight well-being support, and around 1 in 5 are using anonymised shortlisting to reduce bias. Teaching vacancies, the Department for Education's free official job listing service, makes these steps easier, with clear salary fields, flexible working filters, and an application format that supports blind recruitment. It also removes previous salary questions, so candidates are assessed on their skills and experience rather than their past pay. For your next hire or your next role, go online and search Teaching Vacancies Gov UK.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for staying with us. So we're just on the last few minutes, really talking on this subject of September and preparing for September in Term 6, and not forgetting that Term 6 is just as important. So we're just going to focus on the last question, which is, if staff could focus on one thing before the end of term, what should it be? Because time is very precious to us. So if there's one priority that every single member of staff, that if they got it right, if they did it day in, day out, that would mean that September could start on the right foot. So for me, I've said about routines, but that's too broad. I want something really specific. So for me, the specific thing that I think staff should be focusing on is getting silence before introducing any sort of activity, because in Term 6 the kids are even more bubbly than they might be at any other time of year, including at Christmas. The weather can get really, really hot, and it can be changeable. As we know, when it's really hot, we then inevitably have a thunderstorm, which also sets them off as well, because it's very exciting having lightning and thunder outside the classroom. So, when all this is going on, I really do think maintaining that attention and making sure that everybody is listening to you, looking at you, focusing on you, and maintaining that silence, that little bit, those few seconds of just holding the room and having absolute silence, so that all turn around. Because even if actually you don't need to shout over them, just being absolutely silent, not moving. And I tend to use the mum stare, because I am a mum and my children say I've got one. But I will look at children and I will look at them individually and making sure that they are facing me, and obviously praising the people that are doing that. But I think that should be the one that everybody focuses on in Term 6, because even when the weather is hot or it's thunder and lightning outside, if you can get that routine embedded and hold it till the last day, I think it makes classrooms a much nicer place to teach in. How about you, Vicky? What would be your one thing before the end of term that staff should focus on?
It's actually really hard to narrow it down.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
Like, I was torn between two, but they're kind of linked. So I think my one my one thing that everybody should do is greet on the door. And I think,
Yeah.
honestly, I think it absolutely just sets the tone. So it's so important to welcome your students with a warm smile, a nice good morning. How are you? If they've been off sick, nice to
Yeah.
see you back.
Yeah.
If you can see stragglers in the corridors, because this then links to my other one, which is about punctuality. If you can
Yeah.
see stragglers in the corridors, oh, come on, guys, you're going to be late, chop, chop. And you can kind of speed the rest along whilst welcoming your class in. You can hurry them up. And I think that will help with corridor conduct because, as you've said, they start playing around with water and flicking water at each other. And, goodness knows what really is what they get up to. But I think with teacher presence on the doors, your children are getting that warm greeting, and some of our children might not have had a pleasant interaction with an adult that day. You don't know. And I think having that pleasant, no matter how tired you are, no matter how hot it is, getting up off your chair and meeting them at the door, I think is so important in setting the tone for how the lesson starts. You can make sure they enter in the way that you want them to enter. They get a nice greeting from you. You hurry up the slow ones in the corridor. You prevent any pushing or shoving or water throwing or whatever they do. You can prevent all of those things. So I just think greeting on the door is something that addresses lots of different things at once. And I think the way you get them into the classroom really sets up the tone for the lesson. Like we've all done it when you've just, you've allowed a class to come in a way that you wouldn't want them to. And it is so hard to claw them back. Even as an experienced teacher, it is like an uphill battle. So I think doing it from the doorway, from that threshold, I think can really help establish your expectations. And if they're coming in a silly way, you can get them to join the back of your line and they can come in again until they get it right.
Absolutely.
And I think it solves a lot of problems being on the door. And it's really nice as well, where I work, we've got quite a long corridor, and it's really nice when I'm on my door and I just look to the left and I can see other teachers on their doors, and I look to the right and I can see teachers on their doors, and it's just nice. And the kids know that you're present, and then they're less likely to mess around, which I think is quite a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good advice there. So greeting on the door, and making sure that you're warm and welcoming, and then maintaining that routine in the classroom for whatever routine you've got for getting silence before starting an instruction or starting a task. Really, really important tips of the trade, or tricks of the trade, I should say. Okay. So thank you very much, Vicky, for joining me again. Vicky joins me on quite a few of our of my radio shows, but that's because she's got a wealth of knowledge and experience. So thank you very much, Vicky, for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You want to come back again, and it's been a pleasant experience for you.
Of course.
Good. So just closing up then. So today we've talked about the fact that September doesn't begin on the first day back on the 1st, 2nd, 3rd of September. It begins with the actions, conversations, and the decisions that we make in term 6, the routines that we secure, the knowledge that we pass on, the curriculum we refine, and the relationships we strengthen all become part of that legacy of term 6. So thank you very much for joining me and my guest Vicky for the show tonight. Whatever your role is in school, whatever you're doing in a school, whether it's HLTA or a teacher, remember that the seeds of next year's success are planted today. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.